All right. Hey, we're live.
Hello.
Why am I dancing? Everyone's dancing. This is great.
Exactly.
This is a good time to dance. It's Saturday. It's sunny, at least where I'm currently at. It's pretty sunny.
Agreed.
So, yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live show. I am joined by some super annoying people that I'm sure you've seen and heard around the interwebs. Adriana, don't look at me like that. You know you're annoying.
I am?
Yep.
Shocking.
Shocking. No one would agree with you, Amparo, actually. Oh, Gabby's here. Hello, Gabby. Say hi to Gabby. Yay.
Gabby.
So yes, this is the Microaggressions live show. I know that sounds like a strange thing to celebrate, but blame Adri. Adri was the one who came up with the topic.
I did.
I was like, well, let's do microaggressions. Hi, Taylor. Hello. So happy that you could join us. And as I mentioned, I have two very annoying but brilliant minds with me today. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Adri, you can go first since this idea was yours.
I take full credit.
Yes.
Okay, just for the record. So, hi everyone. My name is Adri. I am a queer, trans, non-binary, Mexican-American writer and book reviewer. My YouTube channel is Perpetual Pages, and I've been making bookish content there since 2013. So, I'm currently in my 8th year of YouTubing. So,
That's a long time. Aren't you
I
tired?
know. I am
kidding.
tired. I am tired. Thank you for asking.
It's a mood. It's an eternal mood.
That's iconic status, like legendary status.
Stop.
It is. Don't make me praise you anymore. Like
Okay.
this is just take what you get. And Adriana, would you like to introduce yourself?
No, thank you.
Pass.
On brand.
Like my tocayas, I am Adriana. Well, I'm called Adri as well, but you can for the purposes of this, I am Adriana.
It's already so good.
It's fine. It's fine.
I'm Adriana Martinez Figueroa. You can find me at Boricua Reads on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, sometimes YouTube. It's very rare you can find me on there. And yeah, I'm a writer, editor, sensitivity reader. And today I've just been watching Teen Wolf.
I was going to mention it, but yes, that's exactly what you've been doing.
I hate myself for it.
Why? I mean, as someone who has not seen Teen Wolf, I don't understand the self-hate, but I have seen trailers for a couple of the episodes. Everyone is very attractive, so I don't know what you're ashamed of.
That's fair. It's a bad show.
It is.
I say that with love. I say it as someone who watched the show.
Okay, perfect.
I say it with love and critical thinking.
Yes.
Critical thinking?
Yes.
What is that? I'm not familiar with that term.
Don't know her.
Or that practice, yes. So speaking of critical thinking, actually, it's a nice segue. I wanted to talk about Adri suggested the topic, but I think it's a great topic for May specifically. I'm sorry, it's April. Why did I say May?
I know that time is a flat circle in a panoramic, but
in a panini, yes.
Panini.
We love Teen Wolf. See, Melanie loves it as well.
I respect
we don't.
Gabby,
no.
People are praising Teen Wolf. We are starting off well. I don't know what y'all are talking about.
This isn't a Teen Wolf live show. Yeah. This is a Microaggressions live show, which is on theme because there are a lot of microaggressions.
There are. Oh, interesting. All right. So I will watch it even more now, like with more enthusiasm. I must study it. So speaking of, tell us about your journey into the bookish community. When did you first decide to review and or edit books? So we're starting off with a nice softball.
Softball. You want to
first,
Adriana? Oh my God. Okay, fine. So I've watched YouTube pretty much like my whole life. You know, growing up, I watched a lot of like lifestyle vloggers, daily vloggers, YouTube comedians, and or like people doing like daily news patches, that kind of stuff. So I was already familiar with this space, but I didn't really see where I fit into it. And it wasn't until like 2012, 2013, where I found my first booktube channels, which were Priscilla from The Readables. She was the first. And Jesse the Readers, some other people like that. I don't really follow the people I followed at first. I should just say that. So Sorry, but I I found this space and I was like,
growth.
It just kind of made
it's
sense.
Called growth.
Yeah, it's called growth. It's called evolution. Thank you.
Yes.
So I did discover BookTube in like 2012, 2013, and it just kind of made sense. I was like, oh, like this is something I can do on YouTube that I can actually bring my expertise into as like a writer and as a lifelong reader. So I just thought I would give it a try.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
Adriana, I think you had like a. It's been a long time. This is icon status, like legend status.
Adriana,
Me?
Yeah.
Like,
me legendary? No, I'm not legendary.
I was talking to Adri, but okay, yeah, you too.
See, confusion already.
You're a legend too. Excuse me, with all your, Latinx books roundups. Like, don't start. You know who you are.
So my journey into the bookish community is, it started out as a way to sort of not think about like school, because I was in college and trying to sort of.
See, it's that Teen Wolf.
I need to focus on my new major.
Other your dance moves.
Hello. Okay.
What's happening?
Because I'm like, sorry. I want you to know I'm not frozen.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm not frozen.
My internet. It's my internet. I am here.
Here, Gabby has something to tell you. You are legendary despite your frozen internet. Yes.
Okay. So I started out because I wanted to do something outside of what I was studying, because I was reading a lot for school, and I was like, even though I like reading, I wasn't reading things that I wanted to be reading. So I turned to I started looking for like YA books and was getting into them, especially since I started writing a paper on queer YA lit, and I was like, well, I need to read more.
Legend. Legend.
Yeah. So I started reading those, and eventually I ended up trying to find more queer Latinx books, which were very rare in like 2014, 2015, which is when I was sort of like doing my things. And so I started like looking for those. I found Adam Silvera's books, and I was like, okay, yes.
I think those were the first ones that I also found, like in young adult.
Oh
I feel like that's the first name that I kind of like remembered.
Okay.
Yeah, and
for me, it was Eddie and Dante.
Yeah. Well, that too. I did read that and cry, but like
I've never read that book.
Oh my god! Okay, thanks for having me. I'm leaving.
It's a rite of passage. I guess.
So sorry. I will be reading it. I will be reading it.
God. Okay.
Yeah,
microaggressions. See, they're happening right now.
The host is microaggressive.
He's
Why?
microaggressing me.
Oh my god! I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So I read Adam Silvera's book, and I was. It is. I needed a space to sort of like talk about. I think it was They Both Die at the End. I wanted to talk about it with like in a long form sort of review way, and I made a Tumblr blog about that.
Shout out to Tumblr.
Somebody reads, yeah, and I started writing them there, and I somehow found my way into making a Twitter account, and then
interesting.
And then I was like, then I guess I should also make a Instagram. So yeah, I made those, and yeah, that's how I started. And then I graduated, and I was like, well, I'm still reading these books. I'm still reviewing them. So, and that's when I started like compiling the list that ended up being the Read Latinx list.
That literally saved lives.
Literally.
It's just
literally saves lives.
Yeah. Well, publishers, take note.
I'm glad you think so, because they mostly just make me tired.
Yeah, they're quite long, but that's why we need them. Sometimes you miss a title or several in a season. Sometimes I don't even know that a book exists until I look at your list. I'm like, oh, okay. And I consider myself someone who like knows stuff. I don't really know a lot.
Knows stuff.
Knows stuff.
Well, I didn't know a lot, so that's why I started making the list, because I felt like, when people are like, I feel like there aren't that many Latinx books about this sort of topic, and you're like, then I guess I'm gonna look for them.
Let me spite you with knowledge and research.
Exactly, because instead of like Googling them, they'll be on your like ads or whatever, being like, would you know about it? And you're like, basic research, basic Google. There are books about dragons. There's one.
And actually, that is a microaggression. Like, you just presented an example of one, because it's like, are you my Google? Yes, you are.
Exactly.
Like, no,
that's my favorite. When they're like, "Can you recommend some Latinx books to me?" Or like, "Can you recommend some queer books to me?" And I'm like, "Sure, watch my channel."
Exactly.
Watch literally click on anything.
Pick anyone you want. Literally. But I feel like a lot of people just are lazy.
Yeah.
Adriana, you are a pillar of the community. I would agree.
Ditto. Retweet.
I am just a part.
Favorite.
I am a part, not something that holds it up. Definitely not. And I would rather not have that responsibility.
Speaking of lazy people, I'm kidding.
So it's not laziness. It's actually it's
humbleness.
I'm gonna
sorry.
get real.
Yes.
I'm gonna get real, but I do have a lot of anxiety and depression. So when people start like pointing at me as sort of this like base of knowledge or like fountain of knowledge, I'm not. I just do the research and just like put it out there, because I know that people like me who like to find books that feel like them will find something in those posts that will somehow like call to them. And I've had to like, that's why I said it in yesterday's talk with like Amparo and Linda. That's why I've had to create boundaries on like my notifications, my DMs and everything, because I felt like a lot of people were counting too much of me, and I was like, I'm just a person with a lot of responsibilities. I don't like this pressure on me, so I'm gonna like lock this down, because I don't like people in my mentions like either like continuing to reply like a lot of times, people who I don't know like asking stuff from me that I'm just like, I don't know what I can do for you. So that's I agree. That's just me being real right now.
No, and you should be. Yes. And I feel like when it comes to that difference between content creators, reviewers, readers in general versus the actual like people who are writing the books and publishing them, they tend to be a little bit more, people who demand these answers or demand this knowledge, they tend to go after people who review books or other readers and think that they're just like beneath them. They never treat authors, or they do, but like the treatment is always like, oh, the author is like untouchable, or the figure of the author is just a little bit more worthy of respect, which is horrifying to say, than everyone else. And that is just ridiculous, disgusting, gross. And don't do that, people. Do not do that.
Yes.
Please. Everyone is human. Everyone is entitled to setting boundaries and just being preserving or helping to preserve their own joy. We don't need stupid like crap like that. Anyway.
Exactly. Hard agree.
Hard agree, star.
That's why I have my DMs closed to just my friends and mutuals.
That's a great.
I know that would like open me up to like harassment or like racism or whatever, and I don't want that. So I just close them down.
You get that anyway, like even if you do close
but
everything,
it makes them harder. It makes it harder for them to get to you.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't see it. I don't see it. It's there somewhere, but I don't see it, and that's what matters.
I'm not gonna see it.
Yeah.
Good luck trying to make me see it, because either
because I can't read,
or I'm gonna pretend I do not see it.
I don't know how to read. So what are some expectations you first had, speaking of, iconic status, legendary status of being in this industry for so long, some expectations you first had about the bookish community and the publishing industry that were never met?
I mean, I guess I could start with the bookish community. I feel like this is going to sound like so bitter, but again, I've been doing this for so long, but I feel like I expected the bookish community to be this like accepting place and this fair place where everybody's content is on an even playing field. Yeah. And that has not really been the case. To be fair, I think the bookish community is not as toxic as other online communities. Like, very generally speaking, it is generally a welcoming space where, like,
why is Adriana laughing? I'm worried.
I don't know. Because it's a bad place. Anyways, it's a generally welcoming place where if you find the right people and connect with the right people, like, they'll uplift you, they'll celebrate you, they'll be kind to you and all that stuff. But, like every single community, we have our own problems, and like most problems in the world, they stem from systemic inequality, internal biases, white supremacy, if we're just calling it for what it is,
Exactly.
So from the very beginning, I've always been very aware of the glass ceiling that's above me as a content creator, as a Latinx content creator, as a queer content creator, as a trans content creator. And it does feel disheartening, I think, sometimes to feel like the work that I do is not as valued as other content creators, and to see that, like, the work I put in doesn't really move the needle, or it does, but it's very, very gradual compared to other people. And, like, to just know that there's nothing I can really do about that other than just keep going, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Adriana?
I just know that face. It's like, I have some tea.
So here's the thing. I did mention that I started out in, like, Tumblr. So I wasn't getting as much of an audience there because basically I had a different blog that was my main blog, and the ADRI'S was a side blog, basically. And I wasn't getting as much traction on there as, say, like an aesthetic like Tumblr that was posting, like, pretty books and pictures and stuff. And I was just, like, typing out, like, the stuff that I wanted to, like, yeah. Yeah, I was
iconic because,
well, no, like, my main Tumblr still has a lot of followers.
Not to brag.
Not like a bunch, but like it had a lot because I was in fandom, which is a different experience. But at least I knew what fandom experiences or, like, niche communities were like.
Yes.
So when I entered the bookish community, I didn't have a lot of expectations. I was just like, yeah, this is just gonna be me entering a different, like, niche or community from, like, the other experiences that I've had. Because I've had experiences with, like, harassment on like fandom spaces. I've had experiences, like, with, like, anonymous hate on like fandom spaces. And most of those were just for me talking about, like, queerness or, like, my being Puerto Rican and like my experiences against whiteness in white spaces. And I still experience those from people who were in fandom. And so when I shifted to the bookish community or like entered, like, and made my sort of I sort of not.
Yes.
So
let me not sing. I'm so sorry. I apologize to the viewers.
when I shifted to, like, the, like, more like towards Twitter, the only things that it did give me was a way. I already knew how to, like, connect to other people. I knew how to, like, reach out to people and be like, hey, I'm new here. I know you don't owe me anything, but, like, I, like, if you have any words of wisdom. And I knew some people like Camila or Cam, like, we went to basically the same schools. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I knew them, like, for a while. Same with, like, Sylvia, who no longer is on like the bookish community. So I had that sort of way in because I knew them. And that helped me because they were literally the first tweet or mention that I have on my Twitter was from Cam saying, "Follow Adriana. They're like she's new here, like, and she's great." And that meant a lot to me because I had already asked her like, "How do you find like arcs?" Because I'd already received like an arc and a giveaway, but I didn't know how to like contact people or anything. And they were like, "You just," and they gave me a way in, and that I do say like that was great. That was like it made me feel welcome, like Adri said. However, as soon as I graduated college, and I was like,
however, it's just like, oh no.
I'm
changing like the gears to the publishing industry.
Oh no, I need this.
We need this tea.
That I was at a disadvantage.
Oh right, yes.
I knew I was at a disadvantage when I shifted to like, okay, I want to enter this industry. How do I get a job here? Because I was Puerto Rican, English was my second language, and you know all these different things were stacking up on top of each other. And at the very top was the fact that I never got an internship in the and I didn't have any connections within the publishing industry.
Right.
And basically, I was like trying to make my way in without any like legit credits to myself.
Yes.
So that's another way of like I had to like temper my expectations way after the fact when I started trying to get into the publishing industry. Like it took me a while to get it because I graduated in 2017 and almost the entire year of 2018 I was trying to get a job and I didn't get one. So that's also when I started like, how do I get like, I have all this experience and all this like knowledge in my brain from college and personal experience. How do I use that to my advantage? And that's how I started being a sensitivity reader. It wasn't until the end of 2018 that I got my first job as a sensitivity reader. And I'd been trying to get a job since like maybe mid 2018 as a sensitivity reader. And 2019, I was extremely depressed and I didn't apply to any jobs. Like that's how, because I was just like, I'm not getting any jobs at all. I'm just like sometimes getting some like sensitivity reads requests, but like I'd been sending out a lot of applications, being denied, not even like getting responses, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And that's when I had to like, okay, I didn't have any like prior work experience in like publishing. So I'm just going to focus on the sensitivity reader aspect of my experience. And that's basically what I had to do. I was just like, this is my main source of income right now. And it wasn't a lot. And slowly I started like, I either like getting like maybe a job writing like this article, or like I was selected to publish a poem, like all these like little things that I was just like, I'm gonna try like all these different things because I'm not getting in right now. And now between 2020 and now, that's when I've been able to get a lot more experience. And even then, like I was an author's assistant. And most of all, I've been a sensitivity reader, and that's been my way into this industry. And now I'm an intern at a publisher, but I'm still unpaid. And that was a whole other thing, because I was looking for jobs that were paying, and they weren't paying. And so the only way that I was able to like get an unpaid internship is because I had other sources of income through like either the sensitivity reading, the articles that I was writing, or all these different things that like side hustles that I had to like do in order to be able to be like, okay, I can take an unpaid thing right now if it'll help me further on.
Right.
Which not a lot of people have. And that's the way that I had to be realistic with myself when I entered the publishing industry. Yeah.
And I think you bring up a good point too, because it's like, it's hard to gauge sometimes whether like book reviewers are seen as part of like the publishing industry or not, because we're certainly used by the publishing industry as sort of marketing tools, especially recently. I feel like that's really been catching on. It's like, so it's like, are we part of it? Are we not? I find that really interesting that it's like, they're more than happy to sort of like use our platforms and like work with us. But like when it comes to professional, like paying jobs, they don't really see like booktubing or book blogging or bookstagramming or book talking as like real legit experience that you can like put on a resume or something. It's like, so I think it's a really weird sort of gray area that I don't know where we land on that. And I also agree that like in terms of the publishing industry, I maybe naively when I started going to this expected them to value bookish content creators, which time and time again has not been proven to be the case. And, again, to be fair, I have worked with a lot of wonderful publishers and publicists who are like genuinely committed to getting the right books into the hands of the right readers and who are willing to provide paid opportunities when they can, or sponsorships or partnerships or whatever. But there's still a lot of gray area that's like yet to be addressed and broken down. And it's like, there are still times where like, I'll see people on my Instagram feed who are like, we're both doing the same campaign, but like they're white and they have a bigger platform. And like a little part of my brain is like, are we getting paid the same thing? Like, I don't know. And like, I don't know how to like approach that or like ask that in a way that's not like shady, So, that's just something I think about a lot. I think compensation for labor has been a big conversation in the bookish community as of late, because like what we do is nothing short of unpaid labor. I assure you that we put hours and hours and hours into just because we love books. And, so that should be a conversation, but I feel like in many ways, the industry has made us feel undervalued, and they also try to keep us like isolated from each other and isolated from other parts of the industry, so that like we don't know what we're worth and like we don't know what's happening in those terms. So that you just like, I totally agree with what you were saying.
Yeah, and to that, like, here's the secret from publishing. They won't consider you a legitimate book reviewer unless you're being paid.
Exactly. So it's like, it's like the catch-22. It's like, oh, you need to get a job, you need experience, but to get experience, you need a job. So it's like, thanks, cool,
makes perfect sense. Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, and like I was able to find legitimacy as a book reviewer when I was able to write for Tor.com about my midnights or even like Amparo's book.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were gonna mention it. Anyway.
Yeah, we weren't gonna mention it. Amparo hasn't.
Did you know that Amparo is a writer? Did you know that?
No, no one knew that.
This is news to me.
And that she's a part of the publishing industry. Did you know that?
Not at all.
But yeah, they won't find you legitimate unless you're being paid, and you're not gonna get paid if they don't value you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I know that Lupita Reeves on Instagram has been very vocal about it. And sorry, I'm just wielding this.
Yes,
it's my sort of fidget thing, thanks to Gabby.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so yeah, Lupita has been talking about like publishers being like, oh, will you post this book on your feed? And she's like, well, are you paying me? And they're like, we don't have the money here, and we don't have the money for that. And you're like, then, and that's another thing entirely about how much money are marketing teams putting behind certain books, and the expectations that then that team will have on the readers that they push the book to.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I feel like, oh wait, I have to show this. I have to flaunt it. Yay!
And like that was the thing that I also had to learn. Yeah, and that's why I also like created the like book blogger like spreadsheet that I was able to send out to different publishers, and I was able to see which publishers were interested in using that list as a way to reach out to certain populations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like we
that
were
has
talking
been super
about
helpful,
this.
by the way. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier.
That I will take credit for, because
take it.
It does mean a lot when a book blogger gets, you know, reached out by a publisher. But you know, I just wish that like when those publishers reach out, they also compensate the book bloggers. That's something that I wish they did.
Yeah.
But yeah. And maybe in the future when I like update the spreadsheet, I'll be like, I'll hand this to you, but you have to promise to maybe compensate them.
Yeah, nice little agreement. Write it up in Word.
Exactly.
And just sign here.
Yes.
Dotted line.
Yeah, because, you know, it's been something that I've been trying to fight with, like, different people, like, because they won't compensate freelancers, like,
at all.
Fairly. And then you're like, this is my source of income, please, you know, pay me.
Exactly.
So, yeah, if I'm not fighting for myself, who's going to fight for me? Because my business is myself, so.
Yeah, and, you know, like, I feel like in COVID times, speaking of microaggressions, it's kind of evolved, especially with review copies in different ways, because I feel like, obviously, a lot of publishers switch to prioritizing digital ARCs, obviously, instead of physical ARCs, which is totally fine because it's more sustainable, it's easier, it offers more opportunities for reviewers who are outside of the US especially, so that's an upside. But then, like, I'm noticing a trend now where, like, some print galleys are being made and sent to white reviewers and people with bigger followings, while marginalized creators with smaller followings only get the digital copy, which, like, doesn't seem like a big deal, because, like, you can still read and review the book, right, which is great. But, like, it then puts even more labor on the shoulders of the marginalized creator if they want to, like, showcase that book in some way, especially on, like, a visual platform like Booktube or Bookstagram or anything like that. You know, because especially for Bookstagram, it's no secret that, like, you know, when you have to edit in a cover, those photos don't always perform as well as a photo where you actually have the physical book, which, like, makes no sense. Because, like, sometimes you literally can't tell, but, like, it just, I don't know why. So it's, like, superficial, yes, but it feeds into this, like, larger cycle of marginalized content creators' content underperforming and lacking that engagement, and then only boosting people who have bigger followings and, you know, all that. So it's like, what are we doing here? Yeah. I don't know. I don't have any answers.
And it contributes to this whole hierarchy of, or not hierarchy, well, yes. Yeah. But what I'm talking about is mostly like Hunger Games mentality where, oh, jealousy is involved and they try to get people to turn on each other. The networking aspect of it doesn't really include respect or actually liking other people within your same marginalization or with your same reading interests. It's like, no, we are all just competition. There can only be one.
Yeah, it's definitely like feeding into that like rat race of like, you know, subscriber count, view count, like count. And so it's like, I'm tired. I'm tired.
I'm tired. The forever mood.
Yeah,
you
and
see that a lot in Bookstagram and book podcasts.
And there's that it's a sort of double-edged sword when you know, when marketing teams send copies of marginalized authors to maybe not people who belong to the same sort of marginalization. Like, and I'm gonna use an example of Nocturna by Maya Montaigne.
I say Montaigne, but
I say Montaigne,
yeah. And the way that a lot of white readers were getting review copies and then bashing it online because it was similar to Victoria Schwab's.
This is my favorite and least favorite conversation.
It's absolutely nothing to do with it.
Nothing.
And then like actual readers, like Dominican readers or Latina readers, they're like, oh, I thought there weren't gonna be arcs because the publisher said there weren't gonna be. So
exactly,
you know, you had the sort of thing, and you're like, then who's it for? Who are you marketing it for? Because obviously the people who you are trying to market to aren't liking it. So maybe change tactics.
Maybe
to
change that.
I like it.
You should rethink this.
And that's part of the whiteness of publishing, that they center that white reader instead of
always, yes,
anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have authors as well who will be like, their publishers will say, no, there will be no arcs of your book.
Yes.
And then it might be possible that you see or you're tagged in a picture of someone with an arc of your book.
Yes.
And you're like, what? I didn't know that.
That's always like so wild to me. Like when I see authors responding like, I didn't know these were out in the world. I didn't know they exist. I'm like, that's so sad.
Yeah.
The industry is so broken.
I've been very fortunate. I've only had one book out on shelves, and
what? One book? What?
Two.
Just one book.
Also count your anthology.
Right.
The Puerto Rico Strong. You know, don't discount your work for that.
that should not be the standard for anyone because it was so quickly out. Like I wrote, submitted, and then like literally like 5 months later, it was out. Super weird.
Wow.
But yeah, it was wild. But yeah, you see all of these people who have bigger deals than me or bigger platforms than me, and they're like, oh my god, there are arcs of my book. And I'm like, do people talk to you? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Wild.
It's the world we live in. Oh, Melanie is also screaming. Yes. Okay, my anthology doesn't really count for what we're talking about, but yes.
It counts.
Yes.
It does.
All right. So did you immediately encounter microaggressions upon entering these spaces, or did they present themselves over time?
Oof. Want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like for me, it was kind of both, like, you know, yes and no. Very early on, I got a lot of stuff about like how I look, the way I cut my hair, the quality of my videos, which I think people don't realize is a comment deeply rooted in classism and privilege, but like, that's another story.
Yeah.
Also but also mostly on how I spoke. And this is not exclusive to like the booktube space, but really anywhere I go, like one of the first reactions I always get when I tell people that I'm Mexican or Latinx is that this very intense expression of disbelief and like a lot of frankly racist comments, which I got on BookTube as well. Like, I had no idea you were Mexican. You sound so smart. You're so well spoken. Oh my God. You're so intelligent. You're so eloquent. You're so educated. I never would have guessed. You don't look Mexican. You don't sound Mexican. Like, you're not doing your videos in Spanish. I never would have known. It's like,
oh my God.
You don't have maracas on your hand.
Like, I know. Like, what do you want me to do?
With a sombrero. Yeah.
Stop. La cucaracha.
Like, I'm Mexican. Like, with a Mexican flag in the background. Like, what do you want? Like, so I don't know. Like,
sorry, what do you have against talking about?
But I love that for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff is like so insidious, and it's just like every time it comes up, I'm just like, I don't owe you my life story. I don't owe you my pedigree. I don't owe you my family tree. You know, in order to be Latinx, I know who I am. I know where my family comes from. I know Spanish, even though it's not my first language. Like, I don't owe anyone this performance of who they think I should be. So like, you know, that kind of stuff. And also the other fun one, which I'm sure both of you have heard before, is the regular influx of comments from like randos who are like, Latinx is not a word. Latinx is not a word. Yeah. It's not a real word. Like, stop saying that. Like, it's which never stops sounding completely asinine. But I would love to hear from you, Adriana.
Yeah.
Well, I've been encountering microaggressions, especially more frequently since when I started university. I went to a predominantly white institution in the Midwest, which meant that, like,
sounds safe.
When I was like, when people were like, "Oh, really we're fun." Like, when introductions, you're like, "Oh, they're like, I'm from Chicago," and you're like, "I'm from Puerto Rico," and they're like, "Oh, you don't even look Puerto Rican."
Oh my gosh,
that's my favorite. It's like, what do they look like, bro? Like, what do they look like?
And after a while, I took that more as a you know, I
comment.
I did not know this. Wow, we're interchangeable now. Interesting.
Wow. Okay.
You learn more that you wish you didn't have to learn.
The more you know. Yeah.
And after a while, I started noticing that people would treat me a lot differently when they didn't know that I was Puerto Rican. But they would sometimes be like, I knew you weren't white. Despite the fact that, like,
that's horrifying.
I recognize that I am light-skinned and I am sometimes white passing, depending on the, like, person who is looking at me. Because as soon as, like, they know that you aren't, you know, as white as them, they're like, oh, okay, but you don't have an accent. And I'm like, I've been speaking English since I watched Hannah Montana. I don't know.
Let's thank Miss Miley Cyrus for all of her contributions.
Of both worlds.
And like, and so yeah, that sort of thing took a while to me sort of recognize not just as microaggressions, but like outright aggressions, especially when in a classroom, for example, when in a classroom you'd be like, this is offensive, and someone would be like, oh, you're just being sensitive, and you're like, yeah, I am being sensitive. This is a sensitive topic.
Yeah. This is my life. Sorry, I care.
Yeah.
Sorry, I care about my own life. My gosh.
Exactly. Or when, you know, like in my last like year in college, when I was taking more like writing classes, and you know, people will like skewer what you were writing because you would like add in like cultural things or like Spanish and stuff. Like, and the thing is, like, in that sort of spaces, sometimes professors won't let you like respond to these people.
Yeah.
And it's when they don't realize it's not the same power dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what it is. It's a power dynamic everywhere you go. Like your existence is always tied to that.
It's a racialized power dynamic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh gosh, so exhausting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you just said workshops, and I was like, the trauma just came right back.
It flooded right in.
So, and I didn't, that turned me off from wanting to experience
Melanie.
Yeah. And
sorry,
sometimes
Melanie
they don't even
completely...
they don't even know what a mofongo is either. So they'll be like, do you eat like burritos or something?
Oh
like,
my god.
How is your phone?
Yeah, I do eat burritos.
Like, I'm gonna eat your phone.
Like, I do eat burritos, but not, you know.
Oh my gosh. Why are people?
But yeah, that sort of thing, you know, is annoying and racist and all of that. But
annoying and racist are synonymous, actually. They're just the same word.
Yeah. Or like even in an actual class that was dedicated to like Caribbean literature, or like,
oh gosh,
like
I'm already like
Caribe
dreading
Hispanohablante, it was the class, and like maybe you were like the third person who was Latina there, and even then, like, because I am from the Caribbean, like people would like look at me to answer everything, and I'm like, I do know the answer, but this is a class. This is a class. You all have to participate, and you'd be the only one speaking Spanish, and everyone was like, I'm not confident in my Spanish. I'm like,
God, okay. Gabby.
I love it. You don't look Mexican. Well, that's because I'm not.
Yeah.
But also, what does a Mexican look like?
What does it look like? That's my favorite. I'm like, I know people who are like whiter than me, like pale as me, who like speak fluent Spanish, who are like, I look at them and I'm like, you're so fucking Mexican. It's like, I was like, there are no rules. I just accepted at this stage in my life there are no rules, and I give up.
Yeah. In my case, I was the darkest person in my grad school program. Which I'm not that dark. I don't know if you've noticed.
I was like, wow.
So it's like, and I had the waviest hair, and it was just like interesting. I feel really out of place because most of my classmates were into the classics, and I literally started reading classics when I entered that program. I'm like, this is the first time I'm reading Shakespeare. This is the first time I know who Orwell is. You know, and they're like,
you don't really need to know who Orwell is.
Absolutely not. No.
Absolutely
move on from that. But it's interesting. Like the stereotypes are so interesting, how they're used to like be some sort of boon to our egos, but at the same time, they're not. They're supposed to be weapons used against us.
Exactly.
And even like, and more recently, I was interviewing for a position at a major publisher, like a big publisher,
Wow.
as an editorial assistant. And the first person who interviews me, who's like the hiring manager, and is in charge of the like diversity sort of initiative that they have at the company, asked me if I need a visa in order to
oh my God.
travel. And I'm like,
that's so embarrassing.
Sorry, what? And you're like, and I'm like, I'm from Puerto Rico. We don't need visas. And I'm like, this is the type of person who's in charge of hiring and in charge of like diversity.
They got paid to ask you that question, Adriana.
Exactly.
So embarrassing. I love it. I love it. They're just exposing themselves, and for nothing. It's free. It's completely free.
And that's at a major publisher, guys.
Yeah. That tells you everything. I remember in a particular literature class, they asked why books are called classics. And I was like, because some white man said so a while ago. And I got such stares. Mia, icon.
It's true, though.
Legend. True.
And I'm not going to stop talking about the fact that, like, what are considered classics.
All right.
Because
just white people being white.
Because, you know, even here, like, when we talk about classics, we're not talking about the same classics as you guys are.
Right.
I've never read Shakespeare.
That's exactly
I've never read any type of like white classic. The only one that I've tried reading was The Great Gatsby, and that was because I watched the movie and I was like, I want to read the book, I guess. And I tried. It was super boring, and I was like, nah. However, when we talk about,
I think it's like, I actually think it's okay. I think it's okay.
Prerogative. But like when I think of classics, or when I talk about classics, I'm more thinking about like, you know, Puerto Rican classics or like, which like even like, and there are even some Puerto Rican classics that I don't like because they were written by like white European descendants who were like looking down or being condescending or being like white supremacists about like race in Puerto Rico. So like there are different levels to all this, and like
there are levels.
There are levels. There are levels.
Get with it.
And I'm just here, but you know,
I'm all over the place. I have levels too. Oh
yeah. So
it's exhausting.
That type of thing is. And I know that it will continue happening.
That's the sad part.
At least I know what's coming.
Yeah. That just sounded like a really melodramatic ending sequence to like a high fantasy, but I love it.
I know
I love it.
Coming.
I know it's coming, and I'm ready.
I'm ready.
So I think we kind of touched on this, like how does privilege present itself in reader spaces that aren't often discussed or mentioned. So this one is more geared towards like our community in terms of people who love books just as much as we do.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I always forget to call on someone.
It's alphabetical order, and in alphabetical order, you go first.
I guess so.
It's completely valid. Sure.
So I think a lot of privilege is about access, you know, not only who has the ability to access quality resources, which is most likely going to get you further in whatever you're creating, but who's able to access the time and the energy it takes to like actually create content and review books. So like, for example, you know, if you're able to access a DSLR camera, that's a privilege, right? If you're able to buy artificial lighting or props or, you know, make a cute background, like that's privilege. If you're able to buy 10, 20, 30 books a month, that's a privilege. And that also feeds into your ability to produce content, which other people may not be able to do. So, and if you have financial stability, if you have the support system, the schedule to constantly be churning out content, that's a privilege. You know, if you're able to physically sit in front of a camera or computer and like fully edit a video or a post, that's a privilege. If you fit traditional beauty standards, which are to say that you're thin, you're white passing, you're cis passing, you know, then the algorithm is more likely to favor your face, you know, whether or not your content is good, which is a privilege. If you're American, you have infinitely more opportunities to work with publishers and get review copies, especially because the industry is so American-centric, and that is a privilege. If you never have to worry about your safety online, about your boundaries being violated, about people feeling entitled to more than you already provide, that is a privilege. So it's like there's so many aspects of like what makes a successful channel that is so deeply tied to like privilege and access that like I feel like we don't really talk about.
Yeah, that's all true. And
Adri does not lie.
I try not to.
And
no, I need this.
No,
I'm trying to think because like others is or like.
I love that. Adri's like, come on. Come on.
I'm summoning it.
I'm back.
Okay.
Yay.
I'm back. Yeah. So as I was mentioning, like the same sort of things always apply to different spaces, and the same thing applies to like book blogging, because you have to have like a computer or at least an electronic device that allows you to like write up reviews, and maybe you need like visuals, so you have to like learn how to like you do like something, either like a graphic or whatever, or you know, maybe you don't know, you don't have great grammar. That is also a classist, you know, type of thing. Because they'll look at your English or your grammar, and they'll be like, that's not how it's supposed to be said or whatever. And
is that your condescending voice?
Yeah.
And if you don't have like connections or like friends who are in this space who will, you know, sometimes I'll be like, hey, so and so, could you help me and like read through my piece and see if like it makes sense or like it flows well or whatever. That is also another type of like privilege, because you know not a lot of people have the like I guess like courage to like go up to someone and be like, hey, could you help me? And that also ties to like mental health, like because bitches have anxiety. I'm bitches.
Yeah, and it's not the no that they're afraid of. They're not worried about being told no. They're worried about being mocked. They're worried about being talked about, because you know the bookish community is small.
It is.
It's very small, and it's in the
very
sense
small.
that gossipy. You know, everywhere you hear gossip in every single industry, in every single community. In my home, but I gossip to my dog.
Thriving.
Yes, but at the same time, it's just like, can we just genuinely help each other? Because this classist bull is helping just one specific type of person. And there's so much that we can gain from not helping just that specific type of person.
Exactly.
Wild thought, I know.
Because as we saw this week, there are people who will take your writing and skewer it to pieces behind your back.
And your looks, your appearance.
And everything about you, because you know people are like that, especially white people who are racist, and then they're like in front of you, they're like, I'm not racist.
Did
I ever say that you were ugly because you were Latinx? No, I just said you were ugly
in general.
Just like following Western standards of beauty. That's what I was talking about.
So that sort of thing, you know, it permeates like every space possible, and there's also the fact that like some people don't have connections to publishers or like marketing teams. They don't know how to reach out to publicity like other people do. They are reached out by the teams and are connections are a huge privilege. Even like knowing how to like draft an email to like
present yourself as a professional person and be like, hey, I think I'm qualified to review this book. Like, that's a privilege as well. So yeah, there's a lot.
And this is a shout out to like any like mutuals who wish to like draft an email. I do have a template I can send over to you. I've done it for like Grande, for
That's amazing.
like because they were afraid to like reach out to like publishers and stuff, and like I don't have that sort of like I'll write to them. I don't really care, just because I want people to have the same sort of like levels of privilege.
Yeah,
privilege as much as we can be afforded to have privilege.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a yes, you were gonna say.
Sorry, I was gonna actually agree with what Amparo said earlier. It kind of like feeds into like this idea that there's only one way to be successful on like whatever platform you're on, and that success, like a successful platform, only looks like one thing, when that's like very much not the case. You know, I feel like it's the way. There's so many ways privilege ties directly into what we perceive as quote unquote success in the bookish community. And like when we pretend that, you know, the people on top got there because of their hard work and their persistence, you know, we're just doing ourselves a disservice and making those privileges even more insidious. So it's a cycle.
Yeah, and everyone is exactly that, measured against the same standards that were never created to measure all of us equally.
Exactly.
And it's just super unfair because it keeps keeping people out. And then everyone's like, oh, well, they just weren't talented or good enough or popular enough. Exactly. It's like, no, you set them up to fail. So just
own it.
Learn that. Levels. I'm up here. So how would you define a true ally whenever microaggressions take place in publishing? Because specifically this past week, we have had a lot of discussions about allies, but we always have discussions about allies. Like,
we do.
It's never going to stop because stupid behavior or ridiculous behavior is never going to stop. Unfortunately.
True. You want me to go first? I'm just like real pattern, I guess.
Do it. Yeah. It's alphabetical order.
Okay, fine. We do alphabetical order. I think a true ally is someone who not only listens to and amplifies the voices or platforms of people who are directly affected by like whatever conversation is happening, but also someone who reflects on the privileges they possess and then think about how to use their power and their platform to support people who need it. And I think it's important as well to recognize the difference between performative virtue signaling and like true allyship, you know, because it is helpful, obviously, to like share things, share resources, share information, you know, boost people's profiles or posts and creations. But like, that can't be the only thing you do, right? Yeah. Like you have to open your bag. You have to donate to organizations who are actually doing the work to dismantle injustice. You have to take the time to educate yourself in private and make sure you're like keeping up that activist energy in your private life when like no one is watching. So I don't know. I feel like a true ally is like someone who checks their attitudes and their biases and works through them to change them and undo them, not just like someone who preaches acceptance without challenging themselves first, right? And I think probably the best example I can give is through like a trans lens. So like, for example, you can share an email template to contact legislators about like any of the hundreds of anti-trans bills that are currently up for debate, which is great. Like that's helpful. Thank you for that. But like if you as a person don't challenge yourself to eradicate gendered language and gendered thinking in your everyday life, if you continue to uphold binary systems and ways of thinking, and if you secretly think of trans people with the wrong names or the wrong pronouns, then you don't really care about trans people. And like, no matter what you share, no matter what you do, is not going to move the needle because you yourself are not challenging your internal transphobia. So, and that, you know, obviously translates to racism and other ableism, other microaggressions and macroaggressions. So it's like, if you don't do the internal work first, then I don't think you can call yourself an ally, no matter like what you share or what you present to the world.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of performance regarding allyship because everyone is like, oh, what's the trend of the month? You know, like, who are we supposed to advocate for this month?
And I'm like, helping now? Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God.
Everyone, all the time.
Exactly. Just think of it like that. If they're not white or cis, they probably need a lot of help. Because we don't get half the respect, half the opportunities, half the joy that is allowed to others. And it's quite annoying to me personally as an author to see people trying to hop on what is considered to them a bandwagon. And it is not a bandwagon. It is an entire experience for someone who doesn't look like them and who isn't them. And they will never actually know what that feels like, but they want to insert themselves into the conversation so that they're not labeled a bad person. They fear that label more than what could happen to those affected. That tells you everything.
Yep.
I mean, I have a longer rant coming next week, but it's fine.
It's fine. Stay tuned. Subscribe.
I love how that it's just like YouTuber time.
Subscribe.
Yes. So, Adriana, how would you define a true ally? Does it exist?
I ask every day.
Is it real?
Is it real?
Did we imagine it?
That's why I've been like quiet, because I'm trying to think like
for real.
Because I am very cynical, and what is an ally? Is it someone who will like report people who are harassing you on a daily basis, or is it someone who is like, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through this, and won't do anything else.
I'm so sorry for your, continued harassment.
Exactly. So
I hope it ends soon. Bye.
Yeah. Or is it someone who will, read about what's happening? It's a cryptid. It's a
mythical creature.
It has 7 legs. I'm kidding.
Yeah. And is it someone who will read what's happening, believe the victim of like the harassment, or is it someone who will be in your DMs being like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Explain it to me.
Yeah. And something that really bothers me a lot lately, it's always bothered me, but now that I see it so like more often, it really irks me to the point where I just want to shout at people. But I'm by myself at my house. I can't shout at anyone. No one will hear me. But people who support authors specifically or other content creators who have been super racist. I mean, problematic, yes, it is the word, but racist is way more specific.
More specific.
Just put the label, like say it out loud with your whole chest.
Not sorry.
Because that annoys the person even more. Because that will make them mad when you put the label that is their actual thing.
It's like, I wasn't racist. I was just calling this person that. I'm like, well, you are a racist.
Wow.
So the people who support them, and I'm talking mostly readers or just other colleagues within the publishing industry. It doesn't have to be just authors, and anyone in the publishing industry who support these authors, who support these racists. They're like, wait, tell me what was wrong with this book, because I read it and I loved it. I didn't see what was wrong with it. I'm like, oh my God. I will assassinate the wall just by screaming at it. Like, I will literally just scream the wall until it's gone.
Yeah. I feel like Adriana really like hit it on the head. I feel like that's one of the primary tenets of a true ally. Again, if it's a real thing and not a mythical creature, but like
it's
believing people when they tell you what they've experienced and what they've seen and what they felt. I feel like people don't realize how deeply like that sort of doubt or like skepticism is rooted in whiteness and white supremacy. Like, we should not have to prove to you the things that we are going through, the things that we see. And like, if we say that something is racist, something is racist. If we say something's transphobic, something's transphobic. If we say something, I can go down the list. If we say something's ableist, something's ableist. Like, that's it. Like, believe people when they tell you things, because like, when they bring these things to the table, it's obvious. It's usually like a painful experience. It's usually a very vulnerable experience. It's like, we don't have time to be making up lies about, the hurt that we've incurred and the trauma that we've been through. So it's like, believe people when they tell you things. That's all. Like, believe people.
And the other facet of like believing is something that we repeat a lot, which is like listen, because
listening and
sometimes
learning.
they'll say that they're listening, but they're not really listening.
Welcome to gaslighting school, everyone.
Because sometimes you know, you can be like, this is what happened.
Right.
I don't want like a big fuss made about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's because you were the person who was affected.
Right.
You know, the person that you're telling it to should listen.
Right.
When you tell them that. It's not an invitation for someone to like, for the person that you told it to like go to that person and be like, hey, I heard you did this. Why didn't you do it? That's not fair. Or like whatever.
I love the finger pointing. It just really drives the point home.
Yeah. Or being like, I heard that someone did this thing.
Someone, like, capitalized all letters.
Someone.
Yeah. And it's not an invitation to do any of that, you know. Mm-hmm. And it obviously depends person to person, because if I'm angry, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna tell this person that they did this thing wrong. And if you want to help me, because that's the key thing, you need to help, not unhelp.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's helping the person who's been affected. And if the person is becoming even more of a target by like being vocal about what affected them, it's up to that person to stand up and basically be like the human shield for that person, because like sometimes you get tired of fighting. Yes. And yeah, it's up to other people to like pull themselves up by the
Why do I feel like Adriana's about to punch me through the screen?
I have the thing.
That Teen Wolf energy is coming through.
Yeah. Like, I will freak you up. Like, what?
It is something that happens on a daily basis, you know? And, you know, it's not, you know, you mentioned like someone being like, oh, I didn't know that this person did so and so thing. The person being affected does not need to hear that. What they need to hear is, okay, I hear you. You don't need to be on the person's mentions or like comments or whatever, being like, oh, I feel so sad about this.
Mm-hmm.
This is about me. This is about me, not you.
Yeah, because you have a lot of the people, that energy is more like, if I had been in that room, I would have done something, you know?
Right.
And it's like, if I had been in that
like the share tweet.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'd have been there for the George Floyd murder, I would have stopped it. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about, Cher? What are you talking about?
I mean, Cher is going to share. We cannot take that away from her. People just don't learn sometimes, especially if they have a lot of money and are of a certain age. They just don't learn. But
I would have stopped it. I would have stood.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I have seen responses like that from colleagues. Mm-hmm. They go after the victim and they're like, well, if I had been there, I would have reacted like this. Mm-hmm. It's like further victim blaming and further silencing that person, because they just feel like the victim has to prove so much more than the person causing the harm.
Exactly.
And when the person causing the harm is backed by an entire industry that favors them and that will comfort them time and time and again, it's just super disheartening. As you say, people do get tired. People do think, well, this is not conducive to anything that benefits me, so maybe I should stop. Right, maybe I shouldn't continue. And that's the saddest part of it, because you know that there are people out there who want to help as many people as they can. But if the structure isn't really built to hold everyone up, then you are going to see some people backing out and you never hear from them again.
Exactly.
And it's really sad, because we need more talent and support that looks like us and that is here for us, even if they don't look like us.
Yes.
It's so sad.
And that's on like every level. Like I feel like people are driven out on like the author level and the industry level and the book reviewer level. Yeah. So it's great. Really, isn't it?
Like, oh, well, I feel burned out. And it's a side effect of privilege, especially when you don't have it. It's like, I feel tired, I'm exhausted, or I'm heartbroken, or I'm devastated. Well, it's not necessarily because you're overworked, just that. yes, you are overworked, but also you're under supported, or you just feel like no one is really there to help you. And it's just not what we should be doing as an industry, as individuals. I'm like, what is wrong with people?
Amen.
Yay! It's exactly the energy. I mean, we should all scream at the wall, and then we should scream at people in real life with masks on and social distancing. Imagine at the first ever like convention or conference after the panini is over, and it's just us yelling at people. I love it. They'd be like, "Why are you yelling at me?" I'm like, "Well, you deserve it." I mean, why else would I yell at you? Also, watch Teen Wolf, because apparently it's amazing.
No. As the person watching it, don't watch it.
I'm going to watch Teen Wolf, and I'm going to document my entire experience. Just you wait. And everyone's going to be like, well, that was a microaggression. Amparo, thank you for the trauma. Like, you're welcome.
Truly.
So that was pretty much all I wanted to discuss. I don't know if anyone has any questions for our panelists. I love saying panelists. It's my favorite thing. As if this was like a completely professional scenario.
On my resume.
Yes, you're a panelist.
I was a panelist. I was a featured speaker on Amparo's YouTube channel.
Yes, a featured speaker. I love that. Teen Wolf is full of microaggressions. Oh my god. Okay, well then I should study it for further analysis.
Full-on aggression.
Oh my god.
Full-on aggression. Like literally.
Abuela Wolf.
Abuela Wolf is.
I think I have Abuela Wolf energy.
Literally, one of the first few episodes of Teen Wolf, which I literally blanked out my experience of watching.
Oh my god!
Until I rewatched it now, and literally one of the first episodes, Styles, the white guy, sets up Scott, the literal Latino boy who was bitten by a werewolf, sets him up to be like beat up by a bunch of people, but it just does nothing, just to see it because he was being petty, and I was like, what the fuck?
That is very. There is an Abuela Wolf.
There is.
Yes.
Oh my god! I'm sorry. I'm gonna watch
in a flashback, but like in a flashback kind of thing. I think.
Yeah, because all abuelas should be relegated to flashbacks. We don't need to tell their stories.
True.
For a TV show, no, not at all. You're not relevant, abuela. Oh, F word! I forgot that. Oh yes, look at that. I said freak you up, so it's fine. We're fine. Yeah. So yes, I feel like everyone is just freaking out.
Questions that have nothing to do with Teen Wolf, please.
Everyone's just like analyzing Teen Wolf. I'm so curious about it, like super curious. I mean, everyone, or not everyone, I'm not gonna like generalize, but for the most part, a lot of people there are attractive. So we all know that's my selling point. That's how I'm swayed.
For a TV show that was run by a gay man, it's so homophobic.
I know. Oh yes, that too.
I didn't know that. Oh wow.
Yeah,
that too.
That too. Oh gosh.
We just add it onto the list, you know.
The list of weird things, microaggressive things in Teen Wolf.
Bro, I'm literally gonna say it's outright aggressive. So like,
it's aggressive. It is aggressive.
Oh no. Okay, I'm worried, but I'm still gonna watch it.
I'm still gonna watch it. I don't care for nostalgia. I literally am just watching it just to see what, because I don't remember a lot of it. I don't remember a lot of it, and it just reinforced my love for Scott McCall. Actual true alpha, actual werewolf.
I do love Scott McCall.
Actual werewolf.
He's the main.
He's Tyler Posey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tyler Posey is the character.
Yes. Never forget how Teen Wolf did Danny.
Not speak Danny's name. We cannot go down that path.
Okay, I have no idea who Danny is. I'm very excited to know who Danny is.
This isn't the Teen Wolf live show. This is the Teen Wolf live show.
I love how everyone seems to be like emotionally affected by Teen Wolf. Publishing, get on this. Fix Teen Wolf.
God, no, they'd make it worse.
It was a well, I'm sorry, I was a W for it.
No.
I mean, I'm a W all day, every day, so it's fine.
Oh my God.
So as you can see, we don't have any questions about the actual topic, but I love that people... Oh, yes.
I have questions for you, Amparo, because like you didn't answer a lot of questions.
Yes, I know.
So I guess because you have been through the editorial process before, and I'm not saying to like call out your publisher or anything, or your editor or anything, because you need to have a good relationship with them. But like, what has been your experience having to edit this, at least like BLAZEWRATH games, being, you know, a Puerto Rican writer who will have like Spanish or like cultural things in them, and maybe like I've seen it mentioned like copy editors will be like, is this a thing? Like, what has been your experience?
Well, I feel like I'm just gonna be extremely boring because both copy editors, I had 2 different copy editors for the first one and the sequel, and they were both white, but they were both super understanding. I mean, the first copy editor is also
like they were white, but they were nice.
They were actually like, I'm gonna say this. They were white, but they were smart. They were very, very smart about allowing a lot of...
They do exist. No, I'm
kidding. They do exist. I mean, the second copy editing experience was the wildest to me because it was so short. And the things that they were calling out were not really call outs. They were just like, I think this would be more impactful if we rephrase in this way. But it was never like, remove this, or what does mofongo mean, for example. It was always like, oh, your English is great, but I feel like the image is getting lost in the description, blah, blah, blah. But the editors themselves, my first editor, the BLAZEWRATH games editing experience was with one editor, and DRAGONBLOOD Ring was with 2 different editors because my first editor left the house, and one of my editors for DRAGONBLOOD Ring is actually Black. So I felt she was actually, or she is still, my main editor. But my white editor for DRAGONBLOOD Ring is just, how do you say, a cinnamon roll? Like, she's just incredible. And she was like, yay, Lana! Like, it was just so supportive. And my first editor was also very supportive, but in a more aggressive way because she's a sports fan. And it was just like, everything was more geared towards building the world and making it more exciting. But as far as my cultural identity, with those specific projects, I haven't had any sort of weird, uncomfortable, racist experiences. And I have edited Saving Chupi, which is a middle grade graphic novel that's coming out next year. My editor is also Latinx, so that experience was even more of a comfort level, or provided more of a comfort level for me because we speak Spanish to each other, or we can like text each other or email each other mostly. And it's like, oh, this or that, and it never feels like I'm talking to a white person.
It's being edited by Carolina, right?
Yes, Carolina Ortiz at HarperCollins. And
I remember I was like, it's not First Second, it's not like it's not
Harper Alley,
it's Carolina, yeah.
Yes, and it's interesting because, for example, with that project, I was scared because that's IP. I did not come up with Saving Chupi. They came up with it and were contacting me or my agent after reading Puerto Rico Strong. And for DRAGONBLOOD Ring and BLAZEWRATH games, that was my idea. Like those are my entire universes, personal universes.
Your babies.
My babies. And I was very worried because I was like, first of all, and I can say this because, you know, whatever. I was on submission for 10 months with BLAZEWRATH games and we only had one offer. We went to a variety of editors and a lot of them said, great world building, like everything is cool, but we can't connect with the character. And I'm like,
I will fight I will.
Very, very few of them were like, I love Lana's struggle being diaspora and this and that, but I just don't see the selling. So you're like, well, that was interesting. But you do see, you know, one white person who was very much like, yes, this has an audience. I am that audience. I will put this in people's eyeballs. So yeah, but in terms of like actually experiencing microaggressions from copy editors or editors that I've worked with thus far, I don't know if I'm an anomaly. I'm in the 1%, but I haven't had those experiences. And I think it's because first, publisher is Page Street and they're smaller, and they tend to be a little bit more accepting and more supportive of their authors. If you look at their roster, they do have a lot of white authors, but the marginalized creators that they do publish and support do feel at home, generally speaking. Have I had instances where I wish I wasn't colleagues with other people? Yeah. At the same time, I'm like, I feel at home there. And I've told my agent, I'm like, I love Page Street. I feel at home there. And HarperCollins, my experience has been with Carolina. So again, I'm very spoiled. So yeah.
Love to hear it. We love to hear it.
We love to hear it. Any other questions?
There were some, I think, in the comments. I think there was
one.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I was like not even... Wait. Oh, yeah, let me go back.
I have this slide that has been bothering me this entire time.
My copy editor had no idea what Boricua was and kept changing Caldero to Caldera. No, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm so sorry. Oh, Lord. Also, if you feel comfortable sharing, what is the worst microaggression you three have encountered? I think I should... let me see, because there have been a lot, but not...
You know, right? It's like, greatest hits.
Yeah, greatest hits. I mean, I don't know if you would consider this a microaggression or not, but some people have asked me if I'm part of the LGBTQ community just because that they're... Oh, this book has so many characters that are queer. I'm like, there's literally 4 people.
Yeah,
that are
like
queer.
There's only a few.
Yeah.
That's my favorite though, is like, I don't even know, is this a microaggression? But like, I think it's always funny when people like recommend BLAZEWRATH games as a queer book. And I'm like, sweetie, like, no.
Something that bothers me a little bit, actually a lot. It's like, you are misrepresenting the main character, and people who have not read or heard anything about this book will go into it thinking that
it's a queer book. It's like,
queer main character.
No.
I did get a question though, and this is nice that I get to talk about it. In Dragonblood Ring, we do have 2 POVs. It's Lana and Victoria. And someone asked me, is Victoria a lesbian? And I'm like, not on the page. And then I just stared at the person. and he was like, I got it. And I'm like, I'm like, we don't necessarily see that identity explored in this book. And I just stared at him.
Take that as you will.
Mofongo means smartphone. Well, now we know.
What about you, Adriana? What's some of your favorite comments?
I mentioned
the greatest hit.
I've talked about it privately because, like,
as you should.
But like, this is a different job interview at a different publisher. It's not one of the big 3 or 4 or 5
or whatever, however many.
but it was a pretty big publisher. And during the first interview, it was fine, but then the second interview with the actual like editors, it was a mess. Mostly because they were like, I know that like publishing is very hard, and that like it's a culture that can be ruthless.
Yes.
But the way that they were doing the interview was bordering on unprofessional in the way that they sort of kept trying to like sort of bully me into submission, into like admitting that publishing is hard, basically. And it was like
framing your struggle as normal.
Because at first it was like, you know, you're not gonna be editing the books that you want to edit here. You're gonna be editing, you know, a lot of IP, a lot of like
you're gonna be editing things you don't like.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. I just want to like work with books because I have some experience and I would like to like try my hand at it, and I'm a fast learner, blah blah. Giving them really polite but like realistic answers. And because I don't romanticize the publishing industry, I'm just trying to get a job.
Yeah.
But then they started being like the question that broke me.
It's a whole macro.
Yeah, the
I'm gonna
first
quote
question.
you, Melanie.
Yeah, and then they asked, what was a time that you failed at something that you wanted to like succeed on? And I was like, I gave like a polite answer, just being like, oh, I've done this and this, and it didn't go my way, blah blah blah, thinking that it would appease them. And then they were like, no, I want to know about a time that you crashed and burned, and how did you recover from that? And I was like,
what is the point, sir? Or
because
whoever
at the moment,
I don't like them.
And at that moment, it was very
Drop their name in the comments.
I will, like, privately. I will tell you who it was.
Hey, I'm so excited. Okay.
Yes.
And I was so anxious at that point because I was already nervous. I'm a very nervous interviewer. And when they were, like, going at me, I felt like I was being attacked outright. And I was like, and I told them about like a very traumatic experience, and I was crying about that traumatic experience. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like they were like trying to drill me about my trauma. And after, obviously they didn't hire me and I was like, yeah, they're not going to hire me because I broke out into like crying. And that's what they don't want. They don't want you to be like super emotional on the job. That is going to be putting you a lot of pressure. And I was like, what's the point though? Because they were the ones who were putting pressure on me. And if that's the type of like environment that they're going to be having, I don't want to be a part of that anyway. So yeah. It might seem like a microaggression. It was a full-on aggression.
Yeah, it was a whole macro.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Melanie. I'm stealing that forever.
Yeah.
I'm on my colonizer BS.
Yeah.
A whole macro. That's terrible, Adriana. It
really is.
It's disgusting. It's just wrong. It's wrong.
It's wrong.
And the thing is, it has made me a lot more nervous when I go into an interview because I'm like, I hope they don't ask me something like that. Because I want to, I know it's work, but, you're still human.
Yeah, work doesn't have to like break you.
Yeah.
Radical idea.
Yeah.
What is that? I've never heard of that. Oh gosh. You can colonize it, Amparo? I am so happy that I did not misread that.
Colonizate.
Colonizate. Yes, she was speaking in Spanish.
Oh, okay. God, I was like, what did I say?
I read it in my brain and then I read it on the actual screen. So yeah, I do that a lot. But actually, speaking of where she wrote, I don't think
yeah, it's colonized, Melanie. You got it. You got it in the end.
We got there.
Almost there. It was almost there. Yeah. But I feel like, for example, I do remember now with Dragonblood reading specifically, the plural of sol de noche in Spanish would be soles de noche. But since it is a proper noun or a proper name, we decided to take the S out of soles and just put it out at the bottom, or not at the bottom, at the very last of the name. So it's sol de noches. Yeah. And so my editor...
Weird. That's weird because you have like attorneys general.
Right.
Attorneys general.
Correct. And I told my editor, she was like, "Are you sure we can do this? Like if it's like..."
I thought she was saying like, "Are you sure it's spelled that way?" I was like, that's a whole macro.
She's like,
that's a full-on macro.
Yeah, it's a whole macro. But I was like, no, we should, I'm going to say soles de noche anyway when I'm speaking in Spanish. But if it's there, it's fine. I don't really, it's not like a hill I'm willing to D-word on, Right. So I feel like it's just like, there are worse things that I could be, mad at.
True.
That is not one of them.
True.
Almost there, Melanie. Yes, of course. If you say so, it must be true. Hashtag a whole macro. The title of the next trending topic.
How about you, Adri? Did you wanna You don't have to, because it's a very...
No, I mean, like, I feel like I went through some of them earlier, some of my greatest hits, you know, and I obviously get to deal with like the fun stuff of like dead naming and misgendering and all that stuff. Or being like, people watch my videos and be like, I feel you, girl. And I'm like, you're in the wrong place.
Why are people so annoying?
I don't think it's the worst one, but like one that happened recently that stood out to me and like kind of made me laugh actually was like on Goodreads, I have like a question for like, if you want to add me as a friend, it's like a little, I call it like a filter basically. So like it stops people from just being able to like add you outright, and it like gives me a way to like sort of go through people and sort of curate that space. So it's a very basic question. Like it's something like what's a book that we have in common, or like why, like how did you find me, or like, you know, why do you want to be Goodreads friends, like that or whatever. And this person was like, I don't even know who they are. They're like, oh, like I was going through my Goodreads feed and I like realized that I don't have any male voices on my feed, and like I want to correct that. So like I think we should be friends. And I'm like, you're wrong in so many ways that like I can't even.
It's like, you
like first of all, like adding me would not like solve this problem.
Right. Yeah.
But also like the fact
you're
that
gonna have to keep looking. You're gonna have to keep looking.
The fact that you think you need more male voices in your life is the biggest red flag I've ever heard in my life. So like, ignore.
Yeah, there was one I got recently, because I have like, what's the last Latinx book that you read? And and the person gave a like a good answer, but then I looked at the profile and on the bio was like, one of the last few intellectual Latino men. And I'm like, what the fuck? And like I erased it. I was like, okay,
get out of my God. Block, ignore, delete the app.
Delete the app. Burn the app. Burn your phone.
Oof. Yeah.
Oh no.
A place.
I mean, I feel like with the hits today, that person was in the wrong train stop.
The wrong train stop.
But they insisted it was the right one.
Yeah. And also, not to bring up Adri's favorite author or not favorite author, I don't know, but they already know. They're like,
you already know to say it.
Because it was just like, someone on Book Talk was like, oh, I loved reading Cemetery Boys because it taught me so much about the Latin experience. And I'm like, what did you just say? What are words coming out of your mouth?
What are you saying?
I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was also my Latin experience. Wow. We're all the same. Did you know that? We're all the same.
We're all the same.
I was like, I need to show this to Adriana. I think I never showed it to you.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was really just wrong in a lot of ways.
That's a whole cringe, yeah.
It was a whole cringe, a whole macro and a whole cringe. Good lords.
A full combo. It's a full combo.
If this was Mortal Kombat, this would be just the KO. Oh my gosh. Yes. Look at this. The Latin experience, the singular Latin experience that we all have.
We all have.
I think
I think I can speak for us when I say we all accidentally summon a super hot ghost and fall in love with them, and
absolutely.
You know, learn about ourselves and our family and our culture and our gender identity. I think
correct. Absolutely.
To quote Victoria Justice, I think we all have the same Latin experience.
We're all the Arianas, and just like that one person was like, I think we're all Latin. Latin experience, drop your favorite group.
Oh my God.
Actually, you know that the Latin experience is, we all drink abuelita chocolate.
Oh my God.
I can't believe you.
People on Book Talk, I swear to God. Yes,
oh
Melanie.
My God, that's a whole other live show, Melody.
Yes, we can just like talk about this for days or years, actually, because it's a lot of it's a lot of damage that's been done and damage that will be continued to be done because these people don't stop. They can't stop, won't stop. So sadly, I cannot believe I just quoted Miley Cyrus again.
We can't stop. No, I don't want to get copyright struck, but with my wonderful exact copy of Miley Cyrus's voice.
Yes.
Oh, it's going to get flagged immediately.
I mean, thank all the gods in every single pantheon that I cannot sing, because otherwise this would have been hell on earth for all of you. So.
I mean, wasn't it already? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I did promise. Yeah, I did promise that, but sometimes I fail. Sometimes. But yes, I feel like everyone was just like commiserating. I love this live show because it was just everyone saying, I've been through this. I know what you're talking about. And I also wish that publishing in the bookish community was a safer space because everyone comes into it joyful. Everyone comes into it wanting to be seen and heard by people who look like them, who live like them. And that's not always the case. And we have to stop these racists. I despise racism in theory and in practice. It's like, stop being racist, you bruh. I hate them. And disparage a great plan in the universe by doing so. I know. It is what it is. We can't stop. We cannot stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Thank you, white person. Thank you, Miley Cyrus.
Oh my God.
Who's actually quoting a lot of Black artists when she said that in that one song that she pretended she never recorded. Anyway, okay. I'm getting off topic. So thank you to the chat for very few questions because we were all just commiserating. And thank you to my co-panelists today. This will for sure not be the last panel that we do together. Sure. I can't believe I just confessed that to Adri, my nemesis. But this
writing it down.
Yeah, it's recorded.
Okay.
It's recorded for posterity now. So sad for all of us. But yes, this has been a delightful. I know that it's kind of weird to say that something that was centered around microaggressions was delightful to take part in, but it really was. So just remember, people, we have to stand up for one another, support each other, lift each other up, but we also need to do our part in making this community an actual community and not just a clique. So yeah. Thank you so much for watching. We will probably be seeing you very soon. Like all three of us just being random.
Maybe by then we won't have to talk about Teen Wolf.
By then I will have seen Teen Wolf. I guarantee you that.
It's on Hulu. Okay. That's why I'm watching it. That's the only
Yes, and I have Hulu. Look at my privilege. Look at that. Gabby, thank you for joining us. And Mia, yes, you are also my nemesis. Who says I only have one? I have several. I have layers. Remember, there are levels. There are levels. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a lovely day. And I will be ending the stream so that Adriana can spill more tea in private. Yay!
Yes.
Thank you.